Da-dun-da-dun. Looks like we're live.
Oh, jolly good.
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. That again.
That again.
94, would you believe it?
Ridiculous.
Disgusting.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway.
Our guest is in England, so it's 7:30 at night over there, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Dark. It's dark here about 5 o'clock at the moment, which is a bit of a pain in the bum. But Ruth was going to tell you a little bit.
The way Angie met our esteemed guest from the BBC in Londinium today, is that she subscribed to the Royal newsletter. As if you're a Royal watcher, I think everybody should. It's fantastic, and it's full of really, great tidbits that we don't get over here in America in the news. And the editor-in-chief, on behalf of Auntie Beeb, is this wonderful gentleman that we're going to bring on now, and things are going to drop out of the ceiling, and confetti and all that good stuff, and balloons, as we welcome the BBC Royal Correspondent, author, and other things, Mr. Sean Coughlan. Welcome, Sean.
Hello, Sean. Morning.
Thank you very much. And happy birthday to you. That's the most important.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
To think about all those years. What a great day for you as well.
Yes.
Sharing it with a king as well. I was writing about his birthday today, so
exactly.
you're in very good company. The pair of you. You've whatever you have a common moment.
Yes. Yeah. So what did the king do for his birthday today?
Well, today he was having probably what must be the most unusual birthday for a monarch at the age of 75. He went to a place that was sorting out food for a food bank. He's a man of passions and I think strong feelings about fairness and wanting to recognise people's hardship. And he went to a place in Oxfordshire, Didcot, where they're setting up he's launching a project called the Coronation Food Project, which is all about trying to cut down food waste so people throw away less. But at the same time, he wants to marry that up with people who can't afford food. And his charity was saying that about 1 in 5 people in Britain now, they talk about in terms of food insecurity, not having enough access to food. And it's a terrible thing. When I was growing up, food banks didn't exist. That was the thing. Food banks now everywhere. And his idea is that there are lots of people, millions of people who rely on food banks. And at the same time, we all know in the food chain, these supermarkets and farms, food gets thrown away. Millions of tons of perfectly good food gets chucked into the bin every day, every year. So he wants to kind of put the two together, find a way of getting together the food that would have been thrown away, get it out to charities, and give it to people who need it. So I think it's a fantastic idea, really.
It is.
And so rather than having a showbiz event, he was there in a drafty old rainy old shed in Oxfordshire announcing that. So I think fair play to him, really.
That is absolutely great. I wonder if he's working with or has spoken to Chef Jamie Oliver, because he started the ugly food movement. A lot of carrots and turnips or 2-headed potatoes or carrots with 3 legs or whatever, they just get thrown away. They don't even get used for animal feed.
That's crazy.
So he would be a great one to assist the king, because he literally started the ugly food movement online, and you can buy boxes of vegetables delivered for about 1/3 of the price because nobody wants, because they don't fit in these symmetrical displays in Tesco.
Lovely. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Carrots and carrots.
And it's shocking, when people are hungry, there's so much just doesn't even, gets produced and goes straight into the bin without even being opened. So I think it's a good thing if he does that. So he did that today, and he's doing he's a sort of day of good causes. He's having a reception for NHS nurses and midwives in Buckingham Palace. So they're all going around for a bit of a do and a bit of a pat on the back. So he's being very, it's very earnest. And then this evening, I think there's a bit of a dinner going on. And we've heard suggestions that Prince Harry might ring from your neck of the woods, from California. He might phone up and say hello.
Not show up, but just ring up. Yeah.
Oh, ring up, maybe. Oh, probably.
I really hope they can, mend that
relationship.
I think Harry's a good lad, and he did a lot of work in Africa, in Lesotho and all of that. You would know much more about that than I was.
Yeah.
But I think Diana and Charles, they wanted their boys to be raised, doing good things for the earth and trying to make reparations for colonization and just, bring these nations along in an environmental sort of way.
Yeah.
And it's just a shame that he's got caught up in all this Hollywood nonsense,
Yeah, and also, who wouldn't want to, if you're lucky enough to have your parents around, who wouldn't want to ring your dad on his birthday? Really, we all would, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
If we think.
Yeah.
Well, if he can get through, because obviously we've learned a lot through these exposés, and you might tell me they're a load of rubbish, but there's press secretaries and getting through to people. You could, even if you were Harry, you couldn't just pick up the phone and ring Queen Elizabeth, Her Majesty, because you've got to go through a phalanx of people, right? So, it just depends on direct access.
That's right.
Our friend Karen Rita is watching from Edinburgh, and he brings international nurses into the UK, and a few of them are at the palace today to meet King Charles.
How fantastic! Well, I hope they had a lovely time today. I hope they had a good look around, and
Yes.
got a few nice glasses of wine when they were there, and a bit of a
Yes.
bit of all that hard work deserves a bit of approval, doesn't it? Really,
That's
people
great.
working health services work very hard.
And our friend Efrat is tuning in from Israel. We love you, my dear. We send you all of our love and
my goodness.
wishes
yeah.
for safety for you and your son. And so we've got an audience from all over. So I want to know how, I know you're an expert on the Titanic, and we'll get to that in a minute, but how did you get to being, first of all, how did you join the BBC, and how long have you been there?
I've been at the BBC for 25 years, which is probably a long, long time.
Do you get time off for good behaviour?
Well, that's the next thing, I suppose. Obviously, it's not as long as being a Beatle. That's obviously, this 25 years is just like a passing moment. But I've been a journalist for almost all of that, and I've done lots of things. I used to write for the Guardian newspaper in London, and I used to write for the Times, another newspaper here, and I've done all sorts of nonsense over the years, written all kinds of things. I used to have a column about business, and I've done politics and
Yes.
arts
Education,
and things.
right?
But I did education for a long time here, and that was kind of interesting. Family was very important. It was also when my kids were young, and I was really kind of, you get into that when your children are quite at school, you kind of get into it. Now they're all grown up. But then a couple of years ago, I moved over to the Royals, and a chance came up, and it has been incredibly, I don't know if it's the right word, as fortunate timing, but it's been extraordinary timing, really, because I was able to go to the Queen's funeral, I was able to go to the King's coronation, and to be inside of Westminster Abbey for those occasions is absolutely extraordinary. So I have had a marvelous front row seat in history, really, and you really both those occasions, you felt history in front of your eyes. Amazing thing to see.
The Queen's funeral was just so beautiful. I know she wrote it all down and organized it, but it was just so beautifully done. And I think it showcased to, I'm going to make myself cry, it showcased to the world what Britain can really do with it, with paying respect. And the image that will haunt me forever is Her Majesty sitting at Philip's funeral all by herself, alone in the pew. Must have been just,
such an image of dignity as well, really,
That's right.
And being there on her own, and it was the COVID rules and all the rest of it. And
very difficult.
Meanwhile, at Downing Street, your own sangria.
Different rules seem to be applying, it turns out.
We always say we're a non-political program because we don't want to.
Well, we don't talk about American politics.
No.
But I can have a go at Boris Johnson if I want, I think.
What's he doing now?
No, of course not.
Selling bicycles.
What's Boris doing? Endorsing bicycles or blonde fright wigs?
I'm sure he's doing a fine job, whatever he's doing. I'm sure that he's sure he's doing well. He's left Parliament now, so he's not a politician now, is he? Really? He's a former MP.
And I think I saw yesterday that the Prime Minister has invited David Cameron to come back in some position.
Yes, I know.
It's like being back on the repeats again, isn't he? He's back as Foreign Secretary, and it's odd actually, because it's a bit like waking up and finding out this 10 years ago. The same people. He's now a lord. He was given a peerage, high-speed peerage. He was made appear more quickly than most of us would get our tax returns checked or something. He was in and out, and woke up in the morning as an ordinary person and went to bed as a peer. So he's now
wow.
He's now Lord Cameron.
So Lord his lordship on speed dial. Wow.
Yeah.
So what is it like? Describe to me the day of the coronation. Do you have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go through bomb sniffing dogs and metal detectors? And what's it actually like to go to
The coronation?
Yeah.
It was a great deal of security, and I mean, first of all, what a great honour to get a ticket for it. It was marvellous.
Absolutely.
And there was a kind of you had your ticket say where you had to meet, and you went to a place, and we were there. I was there. I can't remember, several hours before it started. Everyone had to be inside. People were sort of filtered in, and there was a whole process of bags being checked. And it wasn't, you know, sometimes you go to places where the security is just over the top. It's ridiculous. It wasn't like that. It was quite kind of okay, and people took their time, did it. It was very polite, and Westminster Abbey inside was absolutely beautiful. It was like a, I wrote about it. It's like a jewel case. It was beautifully decorated, and it was just full of. It was like a work of art inside. They spent months putting it together. They'd restored a lot of the furniture. They got there's a kind of special medieval pavement at the front that they'd done up for the occasion. It looked fantastic. And the big and the old, they used a chair which is the coronation chair, which I think is something like 700-800 years old. It looks quite fragile, and it's there. This rather battered chair in the middle. And that was quite poignant. This little chair that had been used by people being crowned for centuries and centuries. You think of all the people from history who must have sat in that chair, and there it was, waiting for the next king. And it was a great moment. And it was full of all sorts of people from around the world. All sorts of famous people were there, and it was just a remarkable thing. It was just full of color and vivid music and
music. Incredible.
And it's gorgeous, really, as an occasion. Also, you sort of one of those moments where you sort of pinch yourself and you think,
"Oh yes,
where am I?" And is that really happening just up there? And you saw all the royals came in, and all the politicians and people from the cabinet and chatting away. It's like some sort of mega, like, I don't know, sort of Oscars mixed up with presidencies and parliaments and everything all thrown in together.
Were you allowed to take a guest, or did you go solo?
I went to my own. I'm afraid it didn't extend to my wife, but I went on my own, and it was very nice. It was there were lots of people there, and it was a sort of quite jolly occasion apart from anything else. And I saw recently that the front, they got special chairs which were made that most of us ordinary peasants sat in the regular pews and seating things in the abbey, but they made 100 chairs for the occasion, which were made out of oak, beautiful blue backing, and that was where the kind of mega VIPs sat, and all the dignitaries, and they started auctioning those off for charity.
That's a good idea.
I get a castle from Buckingham Palace, and there were 2 of them in it this week.
Wow.
2 of those
the chairs. It's quite nice.
Yes.
It's quite nice, and they're giving the money to. They're dividing it between 4 charities. One's for homeless people, one's for domestic violence victims and other things. And they're raising thousands and thousands by. But it's quite. In some ways, it's quite sort of unsentimental. You have 100 of these chairs, and then a few months later, you stick them on the website and then sell them. And
I think it's fun.
It's good. I mean, it's good. It's sensible, practical, I suppose.
Our New York Street Team fan club leader Elizabeth is asking, and it may be the coronation. What would you say is the most memorable moment of the monarchy that you've personally experienced? And she's dubbed you Sir Sean.
Well, I think that's a long way off the mark. I'll leave the sirs till later. I think I found the funeral very moving. Funeral of the Queen. I thought that was extraordinary, and it was, like as you said, it was a beautiful occasion, great sort of moment of history. But also at the middle of it, there was a real family mourning a real person, and I think there's something about that when you. Like all of us, when you go to a funeral, first of all, you go and you see people and there's traveling and you get there. But when you get in, there's a sort of moment when for me, it was in Westminster Abbey when the coffin was brought in, and suddenly it was like this moment where you think, this is real, we're here. And, sometimes when you see, there's something about, I think for many people at a funeral, that it changes once you get there, that you suddenly, the reality of it hits you, and then the music
Yeah.
again was magnificent and incredibly moving. Beautiful hymns and a choir, and and it was, and the Queen was a great.
Had good taste. She chose it all, right?
It was,
She
and she was
chose-
very very committed Christian, so it was very much a religious service. It wasn't like a kind of, it wasn't like a
Frivolous.
ceremony for show. It
Yeah.
was very kind of, and I found that of all the things I've seen, I thought that was the most extraordinary. And also because none of us, well, I have to say, I have to caution myself there, because Angie, you will have seen, you'd have been around for the last one, but not many of us were can remember the last
No.
state funeral, last royal funeral. So you've been there before, but for many people,
And
it was just
I've lived
extraordinary.
through
five monarchs.
monarchs,
Charles
yeah.
is her 5th monarch.
Who was your favourite?
Yeah, well,
Oh,
probably
the Queen,
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth
Queen
II.
Elizabeth.
Absolutely.
Just
You must
because-
remember the 50. Do you must remember the coronation and the previous funeral?
Mm.
Oh yes.
Oh, yes.
Tell Sean the story about your father shoving you.
Oh, no, that was my mother.
Was it your mother?
Years and years ago, when I was about 7, so it would be in the early 30s, we lived on the outskirts of Liverpool, a district called Norris Green, and we were told at school that the next day the Prince of Wales was going to come by, and that we should all, dress up decently and
Line the streets.
yeah, we'd all go out to the edge of the pavement to wave to him. So my mother was all for this, so she got behind me, made sure I was, pushed to the front.
In your Sunday
And,
best.
Yeah. And first of all, in the distance, about half a mile away, we heard the cheers, and we started, getting excited. And nothing surprised me. My father on a bicycle is going home for lunch, doing this with his bowler hat.
They're all cheers.
Cheers. Anyway, after a few more minutes, it couldn't happen now. The security would jump on him, wouldn't they? But when we got over our embarrassment at that, eventually this black limousine with the windows down, again, you wouldn't do that today, would you?
No.
Open, and the Duke was in the back seat on the pavement side. And my mother lifted me up and stuck my head through the window and went, "Cooey!" I mean, one doesn't say "cooey" to the king. Oh, jeez.
Was it the king or the Prince of Wales?
No, it was Edward. Edward who
VIII.
abdicated, yes.
Edward who
Ah.
abdicated.
That wasn't why he abdicated, was it?
No, probably not. But, yeah.
And a lot of people got televisions for the 51.
We did,
52
yes.
coronation. That's very common, isn't it? People say that they never families
Yeah.
would have saved up and got a telly, and then they'd all sat round and
We didn't actually have one. The people around the corner from us did, and we all took food and went in there. And then we had an outdoor street party with long trestle tables and ghastly paper hats, jam sandwiches and bottles of water. Oh, God.
We knew how to party.
You were
mate.
lucky.
Yeah. Probably had more
And it
fun.
Oh, yeah, probably. It poured with rain, too.
Of course, it's Britain.
But, yeah, that's
So,
right.
your story about your dad getting a cheer. I saw something very similar at the Platinum Jubilee was
Yes.
the Queen's last big event, and
Yeah.
but when you have the parade down the Mall, you have the carriages and you have the horses, and it's all very glamorous and grand and trotting along and everyone cheering, and then behind them the dustbin men come to clear up after, and
Clean up the horse.
I think they got the biggest cheer because they started doing little spins outside the front of Buckingham Palace, and they got these kind of buggies with the bin stuff on it and waving outside the back, giving and it was fantastic. I thought they were milking every moment to their sudden moment of fame in front of the crowds.
Yeah.
So how did you get onto the Royal Watch, and what were you doing immediately before that? Was it just
Well, the Royal Watch, we started that in just before the coronation. I'd been doing the Royals about a year before that, and I think a lot of news organisations have started to have newsletters.
Yeah.
The New York Times has loads of them. I don't know, the LA Times might. I don't know. A lot of the papers in London now have newsletters, and it's a way of giving people a bit more, and I suppose making contact with people. And you'd know more about it than me, but it's digital connectivity stuff, isn't it? It's keeping in touch with your audience. And
Yeah.
so we began it as an experiment in the run up to the coronation, and people seemed to really like it. And I think you kind of, and you get, and it was fantastic. People, Angie got in touch and told us about their stories, and people began to tell us their stories, and that often is the most interesting bit, because
Right.
and we've kept it light-hearted, we've kept it slightly
Yeah.
tongue-in-cheek, and
Positive.
we don't take ourselves very seriously, and we just have a
Yeah.
bit of fun doing it. And I think
Yes.
people
Oh,
like
I
that,
love
and they like stories, and we're not changing the world or anything, but we're having a bit of fun on the way, and it's so it's kind of caught on, and it's doing very well. I mean, it's not my to my credit, but it's doing very well, and
Yeah.
particularly
Yeah.
people
I
in
bet
America have signed up for it. I mean, we have a lot
I
of
was
Yeah.
just
people
going to say, I bet you have a lot of
who love it.
international readers,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
I
We
bet
do,
I've
yeah.
to
Canada, Australia,
dozens of people, and they've all said
signed
they're
up.
going to sign up and get their own copies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And
and
it's free,
I
which is great too.
well, it is free, and I think
Yeah.
it's you feel like
Oh,
you've got
I
a
love
little bit of sprinkle of fairy dust, princess dust on you when you're part of that community. We build fan clubs here for actors, rock stars, businesses, brands, chefs, and so it's really that sort of community feeling. I grew up helping Angie, but more important, helping Angie help Frida Kelly, who ran the Beatles fan club. She was Brian Epstein's secretary. And so when I was 6, 7, 8, 9, my pocket money was made sorting out Beatles fan mail on our dining table. And so John Lennon used to occasionally come and stay in Heswell with us. And he'd come in nosing in the dining room with a cup of tea and say, all right, let's have a look at, let's pick a random customer. Let's pick one out of the box, Japan. And, he'd say, oh, send them something special. And he never called them fans. He called them customers, because he saw that as a business, and that you have to be nice and treat your customers and communicate with them, because they're the people that spend the money and buy the goods, the records, the tickets, the T-shirts. And so they're the core of your business. So I grew up totally understanding what you're doing with Royal Watch. People want to feel part of a movement.
Community. Yeah.
And I think especially now that the King is in the top job, he's been a lifelong environmentalist. I think having a digital push out from partners at the BBC and the Palace and so on is going to be so important for his reign.
Yeah.
Because we live on one globe. We all breathe the same air. We all drink the same water. We're all suffering from the same extreme weather patterns. And if I know anything about King Charles, and his message of his lifetime is that he wants to be internationally helpful with all of those things. So I think what you're doing is very important, because it reinforces the personality of the brand,
Yes,
of the
absolutely.
Windsors,
Yeah.
and shows them to be real people, like today going out to a food bank.
Yeah.
It all ties
Yeah.
together with what he's trying. I mean, obviously, as a monarch, he can't be political, but he can still have influence around the world with making people think twice about, the programs that the food banks and the homeless charities that they support, and so on and so forth. So I think that's super important to gather people around the digital fireside.
Yeah.
All over the world.
I think
I'd
also
like-
sorry, after you, Angie, go on. After
You go first.
No, after you.
No, I was going to say, I want to ask you more about your other writing adventures. I mean, the thing about sleep,
Yes.
very interesting.
Tell us how you.
how did
What,
I
what your-
was obsessed with that at the time when I wrote it. That's a while ago now. I had 3 young daughters, and it's like when you have young children, that sleep is the thing that you are completely obsessed by, because you don't have any of it. And I love sleep. If there's it's my drug of choice. I love sleep. I think sleep's tremendous for you, and I think it's it's great just having a massive kip during the day. And I was just very interested in the culture, and the book, which did okay actually. I mean, it was serialized in various papers, and it's a few years ago now, but it was about the kind of history and culture of sleep and everything to do with sleep, and the way that it has so many mysterious properties. It's such a big thing, and I think it's one of those things that we live such strange lives, and we're up all night doing various things, and we have too many screens going, and we've got too much information, and we never stop. And I think sleep is a magic thing, really. And
Great
so
healer.
the book was a celebration of my love of
Sleep and laughter,
sleep.
I think, really important in our
Absolutely.
And they're
lives.
great things.
Yeah.
I was thinking today that people, I mean, I don't know what you think, but people, humour seems to. I mean, Liverpool is famous for its comedians and for its humour, but now often, you look on social media and people are so miserable and angry,
Oh, I
and
know.
everything just
And
everything is angry, angry,
I've
and you think, well,
funny things.
cheer up sometimes,
Yeah,
Mm.
it's difficult, Andrew, just saying to post funny things.
Yeah.
Because
You don't know who, other people will write back to me and say, you weren't thinking about this,
blah, blah, blah.
whatever.
People have lost a sense of humor. I said something last night with three of us, my husband and Angie and I were sitting having couch times at 3:01 here yesterday afternoon. It was midnight in England, so we had a little champers to toast the official birthday. And I said, so I don't even remember what it was now. We all roared laughing. I said, God, you could never post that. You'd cancel yourself in about 2 seconds.
Shocking, really.
Everybody's touchy feely. And the whining, oh boy, just 19-year-olds who don't like the color of the iPhone 15 that's immediately available. They wanted the rose gold and it's only available in silver.
Oh,
well,
dear.
Poor little you.
Yeah.
Mm.
We're showing
But a lot
our
of that
age.
But we probably are showing our age. Old people moaning, but I think we've earned the right to moan. But but I think laughing about things, laughing at yourself is so important. And I think just not to take yourself too. People get very pompous, and I think I think it's a good thing just to allow. And I know you've mentioned the people like John Cleese and working with funny people. I think it's such a big thing just to puncture that pomposity and realize that. You have to be a bit of fun, and life goes by very quickly. And
absolutely.
Make the most of it.
Oh, life is like a toilet roll. The closer you get to the end, the faster it seems to go.
Birthday Zen from Dr.Angie. Yeah, we've been lucky enough to, as I was telling Sean, work with John Cleese for a long period of time. And back in the 80s, when everyone was single and everyone was crazy, I was very close with Dudley Moore. And, it was just a fun time of, well, what do you think is the funniest joke? And what's the history of comedy? And what makes certain nations laugh and not others? Slapstick is funny to some people. If you watch a Japanese comedy show, it has nothing to do with the South African comedy show. But, we do have the ability to laugh, and I think we should definitely use that some more. And I said to Dudley Moore once upon a time, you are such an incredible musician and pianist. He was a concert pianist, for heaven's sake. And I'm like, why the comedy? Why Peter Cook and Dudley Moore and all of that stuff? He said, well, I'm 5'1", I've got a club foot, and I had to be self-effacing and laugh at myself because I couldn't run and I couldn't fight. I was too small and too slow. So nobody ever hits you when they're laughing.
It's often the way, isn't it? Comedians, it's a defense thing. And
right?
Who was funnier, Dudley Moore or John Cleese?
Completely different.
Very different.
It's like, what's better, steak au poivre or chicken Kiev? Depends what you're in the mood.
Or beans on toast.
Beans on toast, right?
That's nice.
Exactly.
I would say John Cleese was more intellectually funny,
right?
And Dudley would be more of our level, working class.
Right, off the cuff. I was from Dagenham, Essex. John Cleese, John Marwood Cleese was the father of an educator. He has a degree from Oxford, and
his real name is Cheese. Actually,
his real name is Cheese. So we called him Jack.
Yes, Jack Cheese.
His father couldn't stand. His father was in the army, and he couldn't stand being cheese and onions and all the jokes. So he just changed the H for an L. They are the only Cleeses in the world.
That's very interesting. I've taken away a fantastic fact now. I'd no idea.
Karen is asking, back in August, he was in a pub in Liverpool called the Post House, and the lady behind the bar said that Hitler had once been in there. Sean, I see you've covered bits and pieces on Hitler, and Angie, you lived there. Have either of you ever heard that rumor?
Yes, I have.
I've heard the rumor. Well, wasn't it Hitler's brother?
Hitler's brother evidently lived in Liverpool.
Right.
And it is said that he visited him at one time. I don't know. I wasn't there.
Do you got any more on that, Sean?
I don't remember writing about Hitler, but possibly I've written about lots of things, so maybe. Well, wasn't there a play once about that? That rings a bell, about a play set in Liverpool about Hitler being there.
Oh, yes.
You have to Google it. I've got a memory of
something.
One of those things that wasn't necessarily factual, but was a kind of idea of what maybe it was
Yeah.
true.
Mm.
But Liverpool's a great place, no matter who goes there.
Yeah.
Don't judge a city by its visitors. It's judge it by the people who came from there originally, and it's a great. I mean, it's a lovely city, and that's a place full of humour and music and creativity.
Got some great restaurants
all
now
of that.
too. Yeah.
Right. Chef Paul Askew's doing yeoman's work at the art school. It's really, really good.
Mm.
I was telling Sean on our sound check test, Paul Askew in Liverpool, I mean, he trained under Gordon Ramsay at Claridge's in London, and then decided, he could have gone on anywhere with a Michelin star and worked in that, but he decided to go back to Liverpool and make it a culinary scene. And he's really done really good work. It was the city of culture, and then it got the Eurovision, which brought a lot more people to the city, of course. And the UK must have been crazy in May. They had the Eurovision at the beginning of the month and the Coronation in the middle. Must have been a madhouse.
It was a big week for the BBC. I know that much. With everybody doing something, it was a big operation. But all went well, right? And it was a great showcase.
Yes, absolutely.
What ages are your daughters?
I have to pause and think so I don't get this wrong.
Oh, well, never mind. You've got three
they
daughters.
are
Tell us about them.
21. And
if you get it wrong, you'll be in trouble.
25 next week, and 26.
Oh, so
they're all in their 20s, and they're lovely, and they're all
good.
And one of them's getting married next year, so that's very exciting.
Great.
That's going to be lovely.
Switching
Hopefully.
gears. Yes, it will be. Switching gears completely, you are a bit of an expert on the Titanic, aren't you? How did that? Was that just through personal fascination, or were you put on a story?
Well, what it was, and this is a long time ago. I was working on a different newspaper a long time ago, and I was contacted by someone who was a kind of guy who bought lots of old documents and old maps and old bits and pieces, a collector, kind of an antiques buyer, and a real character. And he had gone to some sale and had bought what were messages sent from the Titanic. So when the people on board the ship were sending these messages, and they were called Marconigrams on telegrams there, and they were tapped out on board. And so on the other ships or the other receiving place, you wrote them up, you transcribed them. So the copies were, so obviously the ones on the ship went down, but the ones that were received by other ships were kept. And the Marconi company who employed the people who worked on the ships had all this stuff. And he said he wasn't someone who could, he had lots of many skills, and I was never quite sure where he actually which sale he got these things from. That was another rather interesting detour I never quite got to the bottom of. But he had these things, eventually sold them. But so he wanted to write a book. Someone had approached him and said that this stuff is just brilliant because it tells the story of the Titanic,
right?
In the voices of the people who are saying the ship's sinking, or people who were talking about before the boat hit the iceberg, they were sending messages saying, "I'll see you next week in New York. It'll be fantastic," and all this sort of chat. And it was like all the sort of little glimpses of people's lives. And then once the boat hit, then there were more messages about the rescue attempt, and then eventually people who were rescued, who were on the Carpathia ship that rescued them, were sending messages saying, we've been saved, and all the things that have happened. And there was an extraordinary trove. So I wrote a book about it.
Wow. What's it called?
It was called Titanic Signals of Disaster. And it's one of those things that I wrote it when I was quite young, and there was a fairly limited print run at the time. They all sold out, and it's worth a lot more now than it was when I wrote it. When the book was on sale in the shops, it was whatever it was, and the copies are now worth a lot more. And I wish I had some of them. I've only got a couple, but a lot of them are on sale. You see them on websites in America, and
I sometimes find old books that are out of print on a website called thriftbooks.com.
Yeah, but not if they're collectibles like
no,
this.
probably not.
It might be there somewhere, but it might be. But that's how I got into it. And then later on, I did a documentary about it for the radio, and I did a Sky history, did a thing about it too. So I did various bits and pieces on it. But I always found it like a really there's something very compelling about that story, and the sense of
The humanity, right?
yeah, and there's something deeply sad about the whole thing, but also fascinating. And it's one of those things that just sort of all human life is contained in that little. It's almost like a parable or some
Yeah.
ancient
Yeah.
myth. It has a quality that people keep going back to. I think it has every generation takes a different lesson from it, and
Yes.
Well,
I was fascinated by it.
it's
Mm.
somewhere between hubris and hope, isn't it? I mean, really, you know,
Yeah, totally. And it is hubris is the word, and it was the ship was the absolute zenith of technology at the time, and they talk about it as unsinkable and the richest people in the world want to be honest. They thought they were just fantastic, and
Yeah.
then nature had other plans, and in the way that humanity has this sort of big
Elizabeth,
talk, and suddenly down
Elizabeth's
it
asking,
went.
Elizabeth's asking, how do you feel about these tourist expeditions down to the bottom? I agree with her. I feel like it's a graveyard and it should just be. Now we know where it is. Just leave it be.
I think it's a very good point. When I was doing the book, after the book was published, and there was quite a bit of attention and publicity around it. One thing that I thought about after a while, I didn't want to keep doing those things because in the end, it is about real people. It's not these aren't real pretend people. These are real people who died and real families. And at the time, back in the 90s when it was written, there were still people around who'd been on the ship. I met some of the people who'd been on board, and I was very sensitive to the fact that this was a sort of real thing with real people and real suffering, and you had to have a kind of bit of respect for that. And it was,
Oh, yes.
and I always felt, and again, as you said, people going down, treating it like a fairground ride. I don't know if I like that really, and I feel in the end it was a terrible disaster that caused a great deal of suffering for a lot of poor people as well as rich people. That we tend to focus on the people who were in first class, but a lot of people in third class went down as well, and their stories were just as real and valid. And
Yeah.
I think I do feel that's I'd rather leave them be and just let them give them
Yeah.
a bit of decency, really.
I mean,
Yeah.
above ground, you can't. We represented for years a boutique hotel group and do all their digital stuff, and they bought some land out in Desert Hot Springs, just near Palm Springs, California, and they were going to build like an Ayurvedic health and wellness spa and what have you. And because that is old Native American burial ground land, they had to undertake like a $500,000 study and pay the native tribes to sit there with teaspoons and sieves, just randomly digging through the sand dunes to make sure they didn't find any bones. They treated it with respect and didn't just throw up a Marriott or a JW Marriott or a Holiday Inn or something. So why it should be any different underwater and people can go poking around? I mean, they don't let you do that in graveyards, above ground,
Yeah,
right?
true. And also, I mean, some of the listeners might know more than I do, but I know if it's a military, like a naval ship that's sunk, that counts as a war grave. That's very protected.
Yes. Yeah.
You can't interfere with it, and that's protected. So I don't see why if it's the Titanic was a civilian commercial liner. I don't know why that should be different. And I don't know if there's different. I mean, I don't know enough about the law about that. I don't know what regulations there are. Someone might know, but it'd be nice if it was protected in the same way.
Yes.
Yeah, and then more lives were lost when these people went down in that 3D printed whatever it was submersible.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, good grief. Yeah, I get that James Cameron is a historian and a filmmaker, and he, made a film about it. And I think with a great deal of respect, our friend Kim Cooper was one of the producers on that film, and it was all done with, the utmost respect. But taking people down for $1 million in these, homemade submersibles
on a sightseeing tour
with bits from the Home Depot, that's where I draw the line. It's like, if you're going to create a piece of media like Cameron did, that is, a historical piece for people to learn, understand, and mourn the lost. That's one thing. But just taking people down for a looky-loo, I just...
I was thinking something. It's not quite the same thing, but hopefully won't end up the same way. But I had a press release the other day about someone offering. They were selling in 2 years' time the offer of a dinner in space. You could. I think they were offering. It was the pricing was in euros. I think it was a French project. €750,000 per head. I think to go and have a dinner
I mean,
Disgrace. And then you're
you might
tempting
just
fate with that, aren't you?
it might just be you might just throw it up, because I mean, without gravity, one of our guests last week, Chef David
Oh,
Skinner,
yes.
he's consulted to NASA and created special food programs for the space station for nutrition and this, that, and the other. There are certain things you can't just take like a George Foreman grill and a toaster oven up there and whack an egg sandwich on. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So it's I don't
Has
know.
a way with words, doesn't she?
Yes, I do. I went to the finishing school, and yeah, it was closed.
And
It was closed.
shut.
It was
Yeah.
closed that day.
No, speaking of Chef Skinner, who was on last week,
I love what Karen is saying. Dinner in space, they can't even get it right on a flight to Spain.
No, that's right.
That's very true.
But
we just flew Southwest, and all you get pretzels or peanuts. Those are your two choices.
yeah.
Is
Like,
that your meal, your in-flight meal, the pretzels?
Yeah. Packet of pretzels or peanuts. And I always laugh when you're at 30,000 feet, like on a long-haul flight, and they'll give you a meal. And they ask you, do you want chicken or fish? And I'm like, I'm at 35,000 feet looking down at the closest fresh water I can see. Do you really think I want the fish? How long's it been in that container? Fish at 30,000 feet is not on my...
What I was going to say is Chef Skinner told Ruth about the most unusual order.
Oh, yes.
Reservation for his restaurant.
On last week's show. So he has a restaurant in Kima, Texas, near NASA, Space City, down on the Gulf of Mexico. And I was on the phone with him one day building one of his websites or whatever. And he says, "Oh, Ruth," he says, "I've got to go. I'm being flagged that there's a really important guest on that wants to jump the waiting line for Eculent and make a reservation." So he hung up and came back, called me back about 20 minutes later, laughing his head off. And I said, what? He said, "Well, technically that's not the furthest away anybody's ever made a reservation from. Where do you think I just got a call from?" I said, "Japan." He said, "No." "Buenos Aires?" "No." "Moscow?" "No." "The space station." This guy was flying over Kima, the Gulf of Mexico, and he went, "Oh, that's right. I need to take my wife there for our anniversary." So he called the restaurant and made a reservation from the space station.
I know.
Do you think Deliveroo would take it up there for you if you asked them nicely?
Yeah.
Do you think you get on their
Postmates.
bikes?
Good luck with
Well,
that. Uber Eats.
Uber Eats.
yeah.
Uber Eats flies. Uber flies.
I always think, when you go on a plane and you have food, I'm always interested in how the cut-through is so small. Is that to make the food look bigger? Do you think? It's like
No, I think it's so you can't stab the part.
miniaturized knives and forks.
I think it's so you can't stab the flight attendants.
Yeah, but when they talk about all these things about keys and scissors and Swiss Army knives, you could poke anybody's eye out with your American Express card. I know, I've tried it.
Well, I'll defer to your knowledge of that, the martial arts with the credit card.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Terrify them.
So what's up next on your jet? What are you covering next? So where are they sending you?
Tomorrow there's I think there's a Princess of Wales thing tomorrow possibly, and then the end of the week I don't see tomorrow to me is that's a horizon enough. Think about tomorrow and then worry about the day after. I work on short horizons.
Yes.
See what we're doing.
You're in the news business.
There's a state visit next week. There's a state visit from President of Korea is coming to London, and so there'll be a fancy state banquet next week, which is always good fun. Go on to that, and the President of Korea.
You do those things.
No. We like the poor orphans shown around, and then we watch.
Stairs.
You should just all start taking Tupperwares with you.
Just grab a handful of it. The president of South Korea, who's the guest, when he went to the White House, he sang American Pie. I don't know if you've ever seen that the kind of karaoke president. And I don't know whether he was enjoying himself too much or maybe he's just a performer. But he should have done some Beatle numbers, shouldn't he? Really, should have been.
Sure, would have done it.
He should. Well, we do these Beatle dinners. They're 4 fab courses. It's called Dinner with the McCartneys, and my husband Martin's curated a soundtrack of all Beatle music sung by everyone but the Beatles. So we've got everyone from Anne Murray and Slash to Whitney Houston and Elvis Presley singing Beatles songs. And then he's got a bunch of incredible videos that he's taken from old, newsreels and things. And we work with Chef, and they do these courses like Strawberry Fields or Octopus's Garden Salad or Sergeant Pepper Steak and things like that. And then we tell the stories behind the songs in between the courses. So it's kind of a fun thing.
You must be the world's greatest expert on Beatles puns. You must have every possible Beatles pun in the history of the world. You must be able to just push a button and deliver one.
Yeah, Karen's on a roll today. Says, I'm sure King Charles can't wait for the Korean fella singing London Calling.
Well, that's an old Clash song, and I always think that they should, for his trip, they should really sing another Clash song, which was called "Career Opportunities," which would be a very good, painful pun. But you should look him up singing American Pie, and I think you should bring him along to one of your dinners. You could have a singing president. You could just busk along, and you might sing a duet with King Charles, maybe the pair of them, Buckingham Palace.
Is the King musical? Does he play anything? Do we know?
I don't know. Didn't he play a cello when he was growing up?
I think he did.
Yeah, that rings a bell.
Thing, but it's not something you bring to a party, though, isn't it? A cello, really?
No, especially not on the tube.
Exactly. Not if you want to go home with it as well.
Exactly.
That reminds me of Noel Coward when he used to say, "We went to a marvelous party with Nini, Ninu, and Nell."
No, they said, "Come as you are."
And we did, and we stayed as we were. It was hell. I have a few other Noel Coward stories for you, but I'll save them.
Yes.
So you met Noel Coward?
Oh, yes, I did. The day, May the 8th, 1945.
What a day to meet someone.
The end of the war.
Box office at the Royal Court Theatre in Liverpool. And my friend and I had tickets to go to the Liverpool Empire just around the corner to see Frankie Lane that night, which was a big deal, an American singer, on the stage in England, Liverpool. Anyway, the war ended, and there was all this excitement on the radio. Of course, we didn't have anything like the communications we have now.
Of course.
But the manager of the theatre came in the afternoon. He said, "Mr. Coward's going to throw a party on the stage after the show. And you're all invited. So you might want to let your families know you'll be out till all hours." And I said, "Oh, I won't be able to stay." I was 14 years old. So he said, "Leave it with me. Hold on." He went away and came back and said, "Mr. Coward would like to see you in his dressing room." Oh, what did I feel important, So I went in. First of all, I tripped. There was 2 steps down when you went in, so went flying flat on my face. Sure, I'll make an entrance. What? And anyway, we got over that kerfuffle, and I sat down, and he said, "So you think you can't come to my party? What's this about, child?" So I told him, I said, "Oh, I'm only 14. My mother would never let me stay out that late." He said, "What's her name?" I said, "Edith." "Just a moment." And he opened his drawer, got out, it was a quill pen, would you believe, and a piece of paper. Pen and ink. And he wrote, "Dear Edith," and wrote this invitation, He said, "I will undertake to make sure she is well taken care of and sent home by taxi," and so on. So he said, "Off you go."
He gave her a big
white £5 note, those big ones.
Wow.
To go home and pay for a taxi to come back.
Yeah.
What was he like, Angie? What was Noel Coward like?
Wonderful. He was brilliant. He's brilliant in the way like John Cleese is.
Yeah.
You never quite know. He goes off at a tangent frequently. But no, I loved him. And of course, in those days, to be of homosexual persuasion just wasn't on. It was against the law.
Oh, sure.
So he had to be awfully careful about the company he kept.
Mm-hmm.
And did he talk about that when you were there with him? Was that a subject that came up, or
no?
Was it something that did people know then about him being gay?
Oh, you couldn't talk about it because they would lock you up, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
In 1944 or 45. Yeah. So anyway, she went home. Grandma said yes. Promptly lost the bloody note, so we don't have it.
I know. I wish we had it.
And she went back to the party and broke the £5. We don't have the £5 note either. And got the taxi home. But she's got a hell of an end of war story to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that extraordinary? And he's one of those. So Noel Coward is like someone from another another world,
It-
really, isn't it? Another figure, almost someone that you read about and you think, well, fantastic to have actually met him.
Yeah.
Yeah. He worked with a lady called Joyce Grenfell.
Oh, she was.
Are you familiar with her?
I know. I
She
remember her from. She used to appear on things like do you remember the Parkinson show on television?
Yes, that's
ago,
right.
and she was the kind of character who'd appear on that. Great. She was a kind
Yes.
of character actress.
I think so.
I think she was.
I think she was
they
gay.
were in the LGBT club
before it,
before it was a thing. Joyce Grenfell was brilliant.
Yeah.
She used to do a whole monologue about pretending to be a teacher, and she said,
George, don't do that.
"Don't
she
do
kept
that,
saying.
George.
Mm.
You know, take your Stephanie, take your finger out." You know, she'd be talking to these imaginary children.
Yeah, there are a lot of things on YouTube about her. Sometimes, if I don't want to watch television, I'll go and switch that on and look for old. She used to sing,
Oh yes,
and she worked with Richard Addinsell, who wrote the Warsaw Concerto, or as it's known in our family, the bloody Warsaw Concerto, because I learned to play it when I was 13, and I used to practice.
You've never forgotten.
Yeah, and my mother used to say, "Oh, play the piano, Angela." No.
Where did you get your name? Angela's a nice name. Where did that come from?
I really don't know, because my mother had me at home, as many women did in those days. And the only story I know about that is that she wasn't able to get out of bed for a week or two, had to rest up, and she told my father to take me to be christened. And she said to him, I wanted to be called Angela.
Lucia.
Was
Right.
it
Angela Lucia.
No, it was
Yeah.
something else.
Oh,
No.
it was something else.
So, yeah. And the priest, when he got to the church, priest said, Lucia, no, can't do it. There's no Saint Lucia. So my father
No,
said,
Lucy.
Lucy, the
Lucy.
Angela Lucy, because Lucy was my mum's best friend.
That was it.
That was it, Auntie Lucy. So anyway, the priest said, well, there is a Saint Lucia. So my father said, yeah, okay, I'll settle for that. So when he brought me home, and, a little bundle of joy in his arms, and went in the bedroom, and she said, hello, my little Angela Lucia. And he said,
Lucy.
Oh, by the way, we couldn't do the names you wanted, so she's called Mary Ellen. Now, Mary Ellen's was the name for the shawlies, the women in shawls that stood in Clayton Square selling fruit.
The market
And
traders.
Lemons, 2 for 4.
2 for 4. Buy me last 3, I'll give you 4.
Ask for 5 and I'll blind you.
So we actually, so you were really christened Angela in the end? Was that Angela Lucia?
Angela.
It's a nice name.
And Mary for confirmation.
Oh yes, I was confirmed too.
I think mine was Michael, my confirmation name.
Yeah.
I think that was a few years ago.
Yeah. I'm just plain old Ruth Ann.
Ruth Ann. Well, that's great. Ruth. What was Ruth? Was Ruth after somebody? Was there a Ruth connection?
Oh yeah. Yes, that was a weird one. So Angie found out that her husband, Eddie, was having an affair with her best friend called Ruth. And when she was pregnant with me, she developed kidney disease, and they weren't sure she was going to make it. And so she thought, well, if I die in childbirth.
Well, they asked me actually when I was going into labor in the hospital, if you don't make it, what religion do you want the baby to be and what name? So I chose my husband's name. If it was a boy, no idea what it was. It was just it.
It.
Still is.
And so, and
I said Ruth, thinking that if I died, Eddie would be free to marry Ruth.
And
so
that's a story and a half, isn't it? That's a big, big story.
Eddie got killed in a car crash.
Yeah, Eddie got killed in a car crash. And then 2 years after that, her cousins, my cousin Mike Robbins, who's the father of Kate Robbins and Ted Robbins, the entertainers, he was lost in Liverpool on the way to a funeral. He went into a grocery store and ran into my mum's sister, the late Auntie Joan, and they had the same exact voice. And Mike Robbins comes in, he says, I'm late for a funeral. Where's Broad Green Cemetery? And my aunt gave him directions. He said, are you Angela? You sound just like Angela. We know her from Butlins, and she's got this she's got to be 4 now, that kid Ruth. And she said, no, but I've got a sister called Angela and a niece called Ruth. Here's Angela's phone number at work. So he said, oh, I'll have my wife give her a call and we'll reconnect. Haven't seen her since she used to play the piano at Butlins for extra money. And sure enough, Mike and Bet Robbins called, and Bet put 2 and 2 together and said, well, Angie's widowed with a 4-year-old kid, me, And Uncle Jim McCartney is widowed. Mary had died 4 years previous, and she introduced them in August of 1964. And on their fourth meeting in November was their wedding.
Wow, that's
And
some
there you are.
story. I need to read your book. I need to read your book.
She's got a few of them out there.
Yeah.
I know. I need.
Yeah.
I saw on your website. It looked absolutely fascinating. And I hear there's another book on the way too. You're
Yeah, it is.
you're
So
going to print again.
it's called There Are Faces I Remember, and it's 168 people, family members, Beatles themselves, all in the Beatles circle, and Angie's stories about them, with
Meeting them,
some
yeah.
interviews, some
Yeah.
quick questionnaires, lots of QR codes linking to video interviews that we've done with those folks. And then she wrote this fantastic book, and I'm like, good grief, I can't afford all the Getty images. So I spent a year and a half digitally painting them all. So it's the first joint project we've actually done together. And we're launching it on the 9th of February at Beatlefest at JFK at the TWA Hotel in New York, which will be the 60th anniversary of the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. So there you go.
So I think it's, you know, the Beatles when I was a child were kind of in the background, but it's amazing how that they have a resonance now that apart from being number one on the charts again, that people are still fascinated by that. And I bet when that was happening at the time, you could never imagine that you know a lifetime later that people are still fascinated by it. There must be.
No, Ringo's mum. Ringo used to send his mum an allowance every month when they started to get successful. And I went over to her house one day for tea, and she got this little blue post office book.
Do you remember the Gyro savings books?
Yeah.
Got one of those out of the kitchen drawer, and she said, look, this money our Richie sends me, I put a bit away each month because when this music
thing's over, I'm saving enough.
He'd like to open a hairdresser's.
I'm saving up enough so he can open his hairdressing shop.
And he threw it all away with the Beatles. What a disaster it's been for him.
With it,
he could have been a really successful hairdresser.
Absolutely. Never mind Herbert. Come on now, Ringo's.
Yeah. Well, Paul's in Mexico tonight.
That's right, playing Mexico City. So
wow.
Oh, well,
yeah. It really is a global thing. I think to sum up the way both the Stones and the Beatles, I saw Ange posted something on Facebook the other day. It's two old biddies. It looks like an Andy Capp cartoon, and it's two old biddies walking past a newsagents, and they've got, read all about it. Beatles, Now and Then, number one. Rolling Stones, Hackney Diamonds out now. And one turns to the other and says, just exactly how far did they turn the clocks back?
That's very, very good and very, very true as well, isn't it?
And
I see all these nice messages here. Look, happy birthday, Angie. And I saw one saying you're the real queen, which I think we should. I'll toast you with a virtual champagne. That you're the Angie's queen. I think that's,
so maybe King Charles, Elizabeth.
Glass of water to you.
Yes.
Well, cheers. Thanks for taking the time at the end of
a
crazy day. We really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure, absolute pleasure, and happy birthday. I hope you carry on being reckless and creative and meeting interesting people. And that's just today. That's never mind tomorrow.
We've got her a new stripper pole for the living room for the party on Saturday.
Oh no, I've got my walking frame all blinged out to celebrate.
I bet you'll have fun.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me. Thank you for being very kind.
My pleasure. We'll be in touch.
Yeah, I ain't seen the last of us, I promise you.
And our crowd here now are definitely your Sir Sean, dubbed by the American fan club. Wow. So you need, to get
outside. Just behind here is Regent Street and the lights, and so this is lots of love from the middle of London. Out the road there, Oxford Circus is up there, and the first sort of twinklings of Christmas on their way. So that's from us here to you over there in the Californian whatever it is.
Sunshine today.
Sunshine, exactly.
I don't know. I think the most overrated job is being a meteorologist in Los Angeles because it's always 72 and partly boring.
That's fantastic. Enjoy every minute of it.
All right, kids. Well, thanks for joining us today.
Bye-bye. Pleasure. Bye-bye then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.